Jules, thanks so much for for joining us. How'd you get interested in echo? How'd you get started?
Well, I was a Georgetown fellow, actually, I hate to say, in 75 to 77. And during the time there, we spent a rotation at the NIH, being essentially a phonocardiographic technician. And I met this amazing a man named Walter Henry, and spent time with him while he was developing the two-dimensional echo along with Jim Griffith. Okay. And got very excited about that and convinced Proctor Harvey, who was my boss, to let me spend 3 months my second year with Walter doing research.
And this was with the original sector scanner?
Well, it was the essentially the precursor to the Hofrel. It was the wobbler, as we called it. And
how was it built? What did it look like?
Oh gosh, I mean it looked like an ungodly, not like an electric toothbrush, but just very mechanical, and just wobbled. You had no idea how it was putting together all those images. It was quite amazing, actually.
What was it like when you put it on patients? I mean, did they did they think they were going to be eaten by an alligator or something?
Either that or get a haircut, something like that. Yeah.
So you did this. So you really started at the NIH with Walt doing stuff. What were you doing stuff clinically then?
So yeah, I was a fellow at Georgetown, but the project I did with Walter actually was called the Old Soldiers Study. We went out to the U.S. Airmen's Home and got normal data in folks who we had good records on for many years, and so that was around the time that Rich Pop and others were gathering normal data, and we did as well. That was the first project I was involved in.
Did you bring that back to Georgetown? What did you do after that?
Well, no. So I finished there, and actually after completing my fellowship, Walter and I were both offered jobs at the New York Hospital at Cornell, and we both almost went, but Walter decided at the last minute not to go, and he went to Irvine, and so I waited for him to make the decision, but I went to Chicago for a couple years with Mike Lesh.
Right. And then you moved you went to Irvine.
I did, yeah. I joined Walter during the blizzard of '79 in Chicago. I moved out there, and he was saying, what's the weather out there, Jules? I'd like to show you, Dana Point. And I said, all right, I'll come out and take a look.
You're the second person that's told a story about moving from where there was a blizzard to where it was warmer. Yeah, exactly. That was a career path.
There you go.
Jules, what's how did you get involved with the ASE? Walter was obviously one of the early presidents. Is that how?
Yes, yeah. Really, I got involved through him, and also through the opportunities that working with him provided in terms of doing some, at least, of the early Doppler work in this country. Sure. Of course, Doppler was going with Kalmanson in France, and even before that in Japan. But I had the opportunity to work with one of the early pulse Doppler systems, and then. Yes.
I'll come back to the society. What were you doing? What did you all do with the early pulse?
So again, the initial stuff had to do with sort of looking at normal flows, but one of the early things was looking at hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and looking for gradients in the LV outflow tract. And I remember early on sort of having to give a presentation and Joe Murgo standing up and saying, this is just catheter entrapment. But Walter had prepared me, and I knew all of his articles cold, and I referred to a figure in one of his articles that contradicted his statement. And he said, well, Jules, why don't we just go out and have a beer and discuss it?
So take me back to the society. So Walter was one of the early presidents. Is that how it was just sort of evolving that you got active? You became a member of the society?
Yes. Yeah. Initially, though, before Olson Management Group took it over, Estelle Cohen was one of the early secretaries. And so between her and Walter, of course, I was following the society and, knew I wanted to get more involved, and that was the mechanism.
And so you became the 9th president.
Yes.
Okay. And was it prior to you becoming president that you were given the charge to start the first national meeting?
Yes. Al Parisi gave me that wonderful opportunity, which really got me going, and gave me the opportunity to work with you, actually, Randy, to put that meeting together prior to the computer era, which was very interesting.
And so you put the whole program together.
Well, yes, except I remember the last evening there was a deadline, and of course we weren't done. And you and I and others, including Nat Pandian, were in front of this huge table with little placards that we were moving around. And Pandian wanted to get finished because we were going to go dancing with Janie Marshall. And I think that's what helped spur us along to finish the program. Exactly.
Jules, as you look back at so we had, you did this first meeting 20 years ago in Washington, D.C. Were you fearful that it might not come off, or that nobody would come?
Absolutely. I was very worried, and I know we set a goal of about 350 attendees, and I think, as I recall, we ended up with over 700, so It was a real success.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it was a phenomenal success. It's due to you, Al's foresight and your determination. I think the only thing I did was to get the capital step and say, we got to have entertainment.
Yeah. And I think you were part of the entertainment.
I think I ended up being part of the entertainment.
But I'll let you comment on that, Randy.
Jules, during your presidency, what were the challenges? What do you look back and think about that you did?
Well, I think one was to show that folks who were doing echo, at least on the physician side, were qualified to do it. And I think one of the things that I got involved in, and Ned Wayman was a real force in this, was to help put together the committee at that time that set up the first ASE exam. Just on a kind of a little bit of a humorous note, we had to be very careful because it was the ASE exam. We had to make sure that the logo didn't look like a sex exam. So that was part of the discussion. But it turned out, obviously, to be very, very successful. It's one of the things I'm proud of.
You did some things with the concept of setting up councils. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that during the evolution of the society that's always been a matter to consider is providing proper venue for folks with different interests, whether they're sonographers or pediatric echocardiographers or anesthesiologists and intraoperative folks to get involved. And so with Rich Pop's help, set up the idea of having councils and independent governance that reported to the board of directors. And I think that gave other people an opportunity for leadership roles and to come up through the ranks.
You've done a tremendous amount also in work with, obviously from your academic standpoint, but you're now the associate editor of JACE, one of the aren't you? Isn't that
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes, that's true.
And so as you look at where our journal came from Harvey's early days to now, what do you think?
Well, I think, the articles get stronger and stronger. I think, obviously there are more imaging journals now, so it becomes more competitive.
Sure.
And we have to reach out to comparisons with other modalities and that. But I think that the level of review is very high now under Alan's leadership, Alan Perlman.
The thing, if you were at the early days of sector scanning, okay, and you look at where we are today. I mean, what do you it's incredible to me looking back over that. Is it to you looking where we've come from?
First of all, the three-dimensional images that we're getting real time are amazing, and also with some of these higher frequency probes to be able to see things, like vessels and mice, just amazing. I mean, I remember when I tried doing this 15 years ago with an intravascular ultrasound probe. The frame rates were 10, 15 hertz per second. Well, with a 600 beat per minute mouse, you couldn't tell systole from diastole.
The mouse would be gone by the time you got the next one.
Exactly.
We'll have to see by the time you... But I mean, aren't the dramatic advances? I mean, as you look toward the future, I mean, are you optimistic that echo is just going to continue to advance and grow? I
think it's going to advance and grow. I think one of the things that all of us will have to deal with is appropriate use of echo.
Right.
And I think that's going to be critical to maintaining our place, our rightful place in the imaging field, and to moving ahead to things that we can do even better.
Well, you've been a big proponent of education, obviously. You were given the challenge. People saw that. Al saw that and thought that you'd be the guy that could get a meeting going. I mean, education plays a major role in appropriateness, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, it has been really not focused on, but I think now certainly the society and for sure the government are converging in terms of their interests in this, and I think it'll be much more a part of our fellows training.
Let me ask you, just sort of in conclusion here, is you've also been a strong proponent of the role of sonographers, and as you look back at how the sonographer field has not only developed but interfolded really with the physician side of the thing, it's a pretty impressive, I mean, for organization and for a field, I think it's pretty impressive to me, don't you?
Absolutely. I think that's been one of the really unique and wonderful things about the society, that physicians and sonographers have evolved together and planned things together and helped the field grow together. And you don't see that in too many of the other societies of which MDs and DOs are parts of. So I think that's been just wonderful.
I'll ask you a funny question. What if you look back on your career, which has been an excellent one, and you made great contributions, what's one of the most pleasant memories you have of either the field or the meetings or stuff like that?
I must say, as I do get a little bit older now, one of the things that I really enjoy are the friendships that I've made over the years, and coming back to these meetings and sort of catching up, sort of like a Neil Simon comedy, same time next year, and seeing, and also how people who started out, say, 10, 15 years ago are now the major leaders in the field, and how they've progressed. It's like handing over a tradition, both oral and written, and seeing it carried on. That's been extremely gratifying.
Well, all of us in the field appreciate all that you've done, and your contribution has been outstanding. Besides that, you got the first meeting going, the national meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, Randy, Thank you.